Some weapons were never meant to exist, forged by gods, feared by immortals. One blade could command the wind. One spear could not miss, no matter the distance. And one weapon was so powerful, its use was forbidden to preserve the universe itself. Tonight, we uncover the most powerful legendary weapons ever imagined, from divine blades to instruments of total annihilation. This is the Immortals, where legends never die. Subscribe and take your place in the ranks of legends. Throughout history, some weapons were more than tools of war. They were forces of nature, feared even by gods. This is their story. Coming in at number 10, the Kusanagi-no-Tsurugi, wielded by the storm god Susanoo and the hero Yamato Takeru. Did you know that in 2025, there is an object so sacred that the world is forbidden from seeing it? We begin in Japan with the legendary Kusanagi-no-Tsurugi. This isn't just a relic. It's one of the 3 imperial regalia. It is whispered that the emperor still guards it in total secrecy, under a protocol of spirituality that has remained unbroken for centuries. Its epic origin feels like a mythological nightmare. Legend tells of the storm god, Susanoo, who was banished to Earth where he faced the terrifying Yamata no Orochi, a colossal serpent with 8 heads and 8 tails. After intoxicating the beast and decapitating it, Susanoo tried to slice through its 4th tail, but his own sword shattered. Investigating the wound, he discovered a divine blade hidden within the monster's flesh, a sword of impossible hardness, the Kusanagi. But what makes it truly powerful? It is far more than just a sharp edge. Its true power fact lies in its absolute control over nature. Its name means grass cutter, a title that sounds humble until you learn the legend. The hero Yamato Takeru was once ambushed in a meadow by enemies who set the grass on fire to burn him alive. Instead of surrendering, he used the sword to mow the vegetation with supernatural speed. Discovering the blade could manipulate wind currents, with a single swing, he redirected the fire back toward his attackers, incinerating them with their own trap. As a curious fact, this sword is the ultimate symbol of imperial legitimacy. No one outside the imperial family and the highest priests of the Atsuta shrine has laid eyes on the blade in centuries. Even during the emperor's enthronement, the object remained encased in boxes wrapped in sacred fabrics. It is a weapon that blurs the line between history and myth, an object that maintains the spiritual balance of an entire nation. If a sword that controls the wind impressed you, get ready, because the weapons coming up next defy the laws of physics and space itself. At number 9, Gungnir, the legendary spear of the All-Father, Odin. Imagine a weapon that completely ignores the warrior's skill and focuses solely on the absolute result. We are talking about the legendary spear of the All-Father, Gungnir. While most weapons require a steady hand and perfect aim, this artifact operates on a level of divine certainty that defies everything we know about combat. Today, we often talk about smart technology and guided missiles, but the Norse gods possessed something far more terrifying thousands of years ago. The mythological origin of this weapon is tied to the cunning Loki, who commissioned it from the master blacksmiths known as the Sons of Ivaldi. These dwarves forged Gungnir using the finest materials found in Svartalfheim, balancing it so perfectly that it felt weightless in the hand of a god. However, its true power was not in its physical balance, but in the sacred runes carved into its tip by Odin himself. These runes allowed the spear to alter the laws of physics and the fabric of reality at the moment of impact. Its primary power fact is what experts call mathematical precision. Gungnir is famous for the fact that it can never be stopped, and more importantly, it can never miss. Once Odin throws it, the weapon becomes an inescapable projectile. It does not matter if the enemy hides behind a solid shield, ducks behind a stone wall, or if a hurricane-force wind tries to push it off course. The spear will literally correct its trajectory in midair to find its way into the victim's heart. It is the ultimate weapon of destiny. If Odin marks you with Gungnir, your time in this world is over. As a curious historical fact, Gungnir was not just used for personal defense. Odin famously cast this spear over the heads of the Vanir gods to signal the start of the first war in the history of the world. By doing so, he initiated the great conflict between the Aesir and Vanir, an event that defined the beginning of Norse history as we know it today. To this day, the spear remains the symbol of Odin's unbreakable will and his role as the master of war. If you thought a spear that never misses was scary, stay tuned, because our next weapon is a flaming nightmare that actually has a mind of its own. In the 8th spot, Areadbhar, the bloodthirsty spear of Lugh. Imagine a weapon so terrifyingly violent and unpredictable that it must be kept drugged just to prevent it from murdering its own master. This is the reality of the legendary spear known as Areadbhar, the Spear of Lugh. While other mythological weapons require a hero to wield them, this Celtic relic possesses a terrifying consciousness and an insatiable thirst for slaughter. Ancient Irish myths describe a weapon that does not just obey its owner, but actively hunts for its next victim with a predatory and chaotic magical instinct. The mythological origin of this spear is shrouded in mystery and blood. It was one of the 4 treasures brought by the Tuatha De Danann, a race of godlike beings from their mystical northern cities. Legend says it belonged to Lugh of the Long Arm, the master of all arts. However, the spear was not a passive tool. It was a living entity made of celestial fire and raw malice. It was so volatile that when it was not in use, its head had to be kept submerged in a massive cauldron filled with the juice of crushed black poppies. This was not a ritual of cleaning, but a way to chemically sleep the weapon, sedating its murderous instincts so it would not destroy everything in its immediate surroundings. Its primary power fact is its terrifying autonomy. Areadbhar is a sentient flame. It does not need to be aimed or thrown by a human hand to find its mark. If the master releases it on the battlefield, the spear will fly through the air on its own, propelled by its own internal fire, massacring entire battalions of enemies without stopping. It acts like a guided missile of the ancient world, driven by a psychic hunger for life force. Once the battle is over, the warrior must carefully retrieve the vibrating, blood-soaked blade and force it back into the poppy juice before it turns on its allies. As a curious fact, the spear was also a psychological weapon. It emitted a flash of light so blindingly intense that it could sear the retinas of an entire army before the blade even touched them. Many soldiers died without ever seeing the spear that pierced them, blinded by a divine glare that heralded their doom. If you find the idea of a self-thinking, flaming spear disturbing, wait until you see the next weapon on our list. A hammer so heavy it requires magical gloves just to be touched. Moving to number 7, Mjolnir, the mountain-crushing hammer of Thor. Forget the version you have seen in modern cinema. The mythological hammer of the god of thunder is far more rugged than any superhero adaptation. We are talking about Mjolnir, a weapon so massive and overflowing with raw energy that even the mighty Thor needed magical equipment just to handle it. While many think of it as a blunt instrument, it is a divine tool of destruction and sacred blessing that shaped the landscape of the Norse world. The mythological origin of Mjolnir began with a dangerous bet made by Loki. He challenged the master dwarven smiths, Brokkr and Sindri, to create items more powerful than those of the other gods. During its forging, Loki transformed into a fly and bit the blacksmiths to sabotage their work. This interference caused the handle of the hammer to be unusually short, meaning it could only be wielded with one hand. Despite this physical flaw, the result was a weapon of such devastating magnitude that the gods declared it the greatest gift ever created, to defend Asgard against the giants. Its primary power fact defines it as a mountain crusher. Mjolnir was not just for fighting. Thor used it to level mountain ranges and alter the geography of the earth. When thrown, it would strike with the force of 1,000,000 lightning bolts, never failing its target and always returning to Thor's hand like a predator. To manage this power, Thor had to wear Jarngreipr, iron gauntlets that prevented the hammer from burning his hands, and a belt that doubled his strength. The hammer also had the magical property of shrinking to the size of a pendant, allowing Thor to hide it inside his shirt to travel unnoticed. As a curious fact, Mjolnir was much more than a killing machine. It was a holy instrument used to sanctify important social events. The Norse people used replicas of the hammer to bless marriages, funerals, and even newborn children. Its most bizarre power was shown when Thor used it to resurrect his magical goats, Tungrisnir and Tunganjostur, after they had been eaten, bringing them back to life, fully healed. If you think a mountain-crushing hammer is impressive, wait until you see our next weapon, a tool that can crack the very foundations of the planet. In sixth place, the Trident of Poseidon. Forget everything you know about simple fishing tools. This is not a decorative staff for a king of the seas. We are talking about the Trident of Poseidon, the literal key that holds the Earth's crust together. In Greek mythology, this weapon represents a force of nature so violent and unpredictable that even the other Olympian gods feared its activation. While Zeus ruled the heavens, Poseidon held the power to shatter the very ground beneath the feet of every living being. The mythological origin of the trident dates back to the Great Titanomachy, the cosmic war for the throne of the universe. While the gods were fighting for their lives against the ancient titans, the three elder Cyclopes, master smiths of the underworld, forged three supreme weapons to tip the scales. Just as they gave the Thunderbolt to Zeus and the Helm of Darkness to Hades, they gifted Poseidon this three-pronged spear. It was forged in the primordial fires of Tartarus and imbued with the chaotic energy of the deep earth and the oceans, becoming the ultimate symbol of his divine authority over the waters and the deep earth. Its primary power fact is its absolute control over geophysics. The trident is not just a stabbing weapon. It is a seismic regulator. A single strike against the ground can trigger massive earthquakes that level entire cities and split continents in two. When Poseidon strikes the surface of the ocean, he can summon tsunamis tall enough to swallow mountain peaks. Perhaps his most terrifying ability was the power to alter geography at will. The myth says he could make entire islands rise from the dark depths, or sink them into the abyss in a matter of seconds. To hold the trident is to hold the power of planetary restructuring. As a curious fact, the trident was central to the famous contest for the city of Athens. To prove his worth as a patron god, Poseidon struck a rock on the Acropolis with his weapon, and instantly, a spring of salt water erupted from the stone to impress the people. Although he lost the city to Athena, that spring remained as a testament to the trident's raw power. If you think an earthquake-inducing spear is dangerous, wait until you see our next weapon, a legendary blade that offers its owner absolute invincibility in the heat of battle. Taking the fifth spot, Excalibur, the legendary blade of King Arthur. Almost everyone has heard of Excalibur, but most people forget that the true and terrifying secret of its power was not in the sharpened blade itself, but in its scabbard. For our fifth position, we explore the most famous sword in European history, a weapon that guaranteed its bearer absolute victory. The legend of King Arthur and his sword is a pillar of mythology, a tale of destiny, royalty, and above all, a form of magical invincibility that defied the laws of war. The mythological origin of Excalibur is often confused with the sword in the stone. However, the ultimate weapon was given to Arthur by the mysterious Lady of the Lake. In an act of pure magic, she emerged from the waters holding the sword high, sealing Arthur's fate as the one true king of Britain. This mystical act endowed the weapon with divine properties, linking its power directly to the destiny of the realm. It was not a weapon forged by human hands, but a gift from a supernatural plane. Its primary power fact goes far beyond mere brute strength. The blade itself was spectacular. It was said to glow with the light of 30 torches, acting as a beacon of hope for his allies and a blinding terror for his enemies on the battlefield. But the most powerful item was undoubtedly the magical scabbard. The sheath possessed an absolute protection. As long as King Arthur wore it, his wounds would simply not bleed. It was literally impossible for him to die from blood loss or from mortal injuries during combat. The scabbard ensured total invulnerability, and only the theft of this sheath allowed Arthur to be mortally wounded. As a curious fact, the original name of the sword in Old Welsh was Caladfwlch, which translates to hard cleft. This description was not a coincidence. The sword was capable of cutting through the strongest iron as if it were soft butter, proving that its edge was not of this world. Excalibur is the perfect symbol of how magic and myth joined together to create a guaranteed victory in the face of impossible odds. If you thought a sword that grants invincibility was impressive, get ready, because the weapons coming up next are designed to break the very foundations of reality. In fourth place, the flaming sword, wielded by the giant Surtur. Imagine a weapon created with one terrifying purpose: to ensure that absolutely nothing remains alive in the entire universe. In the fourth position of our list, we encounter the most destructive blade in Norse mythology, the flaming sword of Surtur. While other weapons are used to win wars or protect kingdoms, this sword exists solely to execute the final act of history. It is the ultimate tool of cosmic reset, waiting in the darkness for the moment when the stars will fall and the gods will meet their end. The mythological origin of this weapon is tied to the primordial realm of Muspelheim, a place of eternal heat and fire. It is wielded by Surtur, the fire giant who has stood guard at the gates of his realm since the beginning of time. Surtur is not a villain, but a force of nature, a personification of the destructive power of flame. He waits patiently for the arrival of Ragnarok, the twilight of the gods, when he will lead his army into battle against the Aesir. The sword is an extension of his essence, forged from the purest heat of the first fires that ever burned in the void of Ginnungagap. Its primary power fact is what defines it as a weapon of total extinction. The sword does not just cut armor, it ignites the fabric of reality. According to prophecy, at the peak of the final battle, Surtur will cast his sword across the 9 worlds, unleashing a cosmic firestorm that will consume the world tree Yggdrasil, the realms of men, and the palaces of the gods. This fire is so absolute that it will even incinerate the stars themselves, reducing the entire universe to a blank canvas of ash. It is the reset button of the cosmos, a blade that brings an end to the very concept of time. As a curious fact, the intensity of this weapon is beyond human comprehension. It is said to shine with a brilliance that outshines the sun, and its heat is so extreme that the oceans begin to evaporate into steam before the blade even touches the water. The mere presence of the sword in a realm is enough to turn fertile lands into barren deserts in seconds. If you think an apocalyptic fire sword is the peak of power, prepare yourself, because our top 3 objects move beyond physical destruction into the realm of the absolute. In the third spot, the Scythe of Cronus, we have reached the top 3, entering a territory where weapons do not just kill, but change existence. At this position is the Scythe of Cronus, the weapon that ended the era of the sky and gave birth to time itself. In Greek mythology, this object represents the cold, inevitable end of all things. It is the instrument of a cosmic coup that allowed the Titans to overthrow the primordial foundations of the universe. The mythological origin of this blade is one of the darkest tales. Gaia, personification of Earth, suffered under her husband Uranus, the sky. To free herself, she crafted a curved blade from an indestructible gray mineral called adamantine. She called upon her children, the Titans, to use it. Only Cronus was brave enough to take the weapon. He waited in ambush for his father, and with one swift strike, he used the scythe to castrate Uranus, forever separating the sky from the earth. Its primary power fact defines it as the harvester of immortality. Before this weapon, primordial gods were beyond physical harm. The Scythe of Cronus proved that even the eternal could be wounded and dethroned. It represents the concept of chronos, or time, which consumes everything it creates. Just as a scythe harvests grain, this weapon harvests life, power, and even the gods. Nothing can survive its edge because it represents the inevitable decay that time brings to every living being. To be struck by this blade is to be removed from the cycle of eternity. As a curious fact, the curved design of this scythe is the direct ancestor of the most famous symbol of mortality. The image of the Grim Reaper carrying a scythe comes directly from the legends of Cronus. He was Father Time, the harvester of souls who became the personification of death. If you think wounding the sky is terrifying, stay tuned for our top 2, which possess the power to erase entire planets and rewrite the laws of the universe. In second place, the Pashupatastra, the ultimate weapon of Lord Shiva. We have reached the penultimate spot on our list with a weapon so terrifying that it is often called the atomic bomb of the ancient world. The Pashupatastra is not just a tool of war, it is a celestial force of nature belonging to Lord Shiva. While other weapons in this countdown rely on physical impact or elemental magic, this Hindu relic operates on a level of absolute cosmic annihilation. Ancient Vedic texts describe a power capable of ending existence itself, a force that transcends the physical limitations of any mortal army. The mythological origin of the Pashupatastra is rooted in intense spiritual discipline. Unlike a sword found in a monster or a hammer forged by dwarves, this weapon is earned through years of extreme meditation and trials. In the epic Mahabharata, the hero Arjuna had to prove his worthiness to Lord Shiva before receiving it. It is considered an irresistible weapon of the third eye, a manifestation of Shiva's role as the destroyer within the cosmic trinity. It is not something you carry in a sheath, but a divine energy that resides in the consciousness of the warrior. Its primary power fact is that it is a weapon of thought. It does not require a physical bow or a steady hand to be fired. The Pashupatastra can be launched through the eyes, the mind, or by chanting a secret mantra. Once activated, its power is limitless. It can disintegrate entire planets, stop the flow of time, and reduce the entire creation to nothingness in a single blink. It is an unstoppable force that ignores all conventional defenses, designed to clear the universe of all life to allow for a new beginning. As a curious fact, the use of the Pashupatastra is governed by strict cosmic laws. It is absolutely forbidden to use it against mortal humans or common soldiers. Its power is so vast that it can only be invoked against immortal enemies, demons, or celestial beings who threaten the balance of the universe. If a warrior were to use it against a common foe out of anger or ego, the weapon would destroy the entire world as collateral damage. It is the ultimate weapon of last resort, a final judgment that once unleashed cannot be taken back. Only one weapon stands above it, and it belongs to the king of the gods. And finally, at number 1, the Thunderbolt of Zeus, the ultimate weapon of sovereignty and divine judgment. We have finally arrived at the absolute peak of mythological power. The number 1 spot belongs to the most iconic and feared weapon in human history, the Thunderbolt of Zeus. This is not just a weather phenomenon. It is the ultimate projectile of divine judgment. While other weapons can destroy armies, the Thunderbolt is the only one that established the current order of the universe, proving that even the most terrifying monsters and ancient gods must bow before the King of Olympus. The mythological origin of this weapon dates back to the Titanomachy. Zeus and his siblings were fighting a desperate war against their father, Cronus. To gain the advantage, Zeus freed the elder Cyclopes from Tartarus. In gratitude, these mastersmiths forged 3 supreme thunderbolts for him. One was for the thunder, one for the lightning, and the most devastating for the final judgment. This gift turned a rebel into the undisputed ruler of the cosmos, providing him with a long-range artillery that no shield in existence could ever hope to block or deflect. Its primary power fact is that it represents absolute sovereignty over existence. The Thunderbolt is a concentrated spear of pure, inexhaustible energy. Its power was famously tested against Typhon, a monster so gargantuan that its heads touched the stars. When all other gods fled in terror, Zeus used his bolts to incinerate the monster's 100 heads and bury him under a mountain. The Thunderbolt can vaporize immortal deities and incinerate the entire earth. It is the primary reason why the other Olympian gods remain in line. They live in constant, justified fear of his devastating wrath. As a curious fact, ancient poets describe these bolts as being alive. They were not inanimate objects, but sentient forces of nature kept in Olympus. Zeus stored them like arrows in an infinite quiver, and they were said to hiss and vibrate with a hunger for justice. This weapon is the definitive symbol of power, a force that ended the age of chaos and maintains the balance of the world. You have seen the most powerful objects in history, but everything falls under the shadow of the Great Bolt. If any of these weapons truly surprised you, leave a like to honor their power. Tell us in the comments, which legendary weapon would you fear the most? And if you want to see power taken even further, watch The 10 Most Powerful Gods in Mythology, now available on the channel.